Attack! This is Lo-Fi Thrasher Lenny Blade, and this is the Retro Hunter Thailand show. And today I'd like to talk to you about a very special book that I just got, that I kickstarted. Actually, Battlefield Bangkok from here in Thailand kickstarted it for me, but it arrived about 3 days ago. And this is Dice Men, the origin of Games Workshop. And this is mostly written by Ian Livingston, but also Steve Jackson has a couple of blurbs, and there are some other contributors as well. And it's nice to get a European slash British perspective on the rise of our beloved hobby. But yeah, so I read it already from cover to cover, and I can say that it's absolutely amazing. And I'm gonna go straight to the negatives here, because I really had to scratch the bottom of the barrel. Like, this is really nitpicking is what it is. But some of the information in there is pretty common, you know, that because the history of Games Workshop, the early history especially, is very closely linked to Dungeons and Dragons, because they were the first the first company that licensed and sold Dungeons and Dragons in Europe. And yeah, so there are a couple of paragraphs dedicated to, you know, the history of Dungeons and Dragons in general, and you know, we've all read it before, and you know, nice, mind you, but high-res pictures, you know, of the 3 books, or in the original box set and so on. We've all seen it before, we've all read it before. The good news is that the good stuff in this book is everything else, and I really mean it. It's an absolutely outstanding book, and I just couldn't put it down, you know, once I started reading. And there are a lot of, you know, they go through the early history with the fanzine they had, and then White Dwarf, Games Workshop, of course, and they talk about all the products, and there are a lot of anecdotes and like little histories and funny things. Now, I'm not gonna spoil anything here, because I don't want to spoil it for you if you're planning on buying this book. But there's one story that I would like to tell, and it's, I'm sorry, Ian Livingstone, don't sue me or anything, and I'm probably gonna tell it horribly, but so they went to the US, right, to travel around and to meet Gary Gygax, and they went to Gen Con and things like that. And then when they came back, they actually didn't have anywhere to live. They had a little office that they called the bread bin office, or whatever they called it, but they didn't have anywhere to stay, so they actually lived in a van that was parked outside their office, and they joined this local squash club just that opened early in the morning, just so they could go and take a shower and shave. I thought that was funny. So that's how strapped they were for cash at one point. Obviously, you know, this is a success story. So they obviously took off after that, and yeah, and they talk about everything, like these kind of anecdotes, and their very complicated relationship with TSR and Gary Gygax, which is really interesting. And they talk about the video game crash of 1983 and the Satanic Panic, and how that affected Games Workshop, because they did both these events affected Games Workshop. They almost had to close their doors because of the video game crash, because they had so much unsold stock. But that's, you know, I'm not gonna spoil anything else. But they talk about a lot of their products. But mind you, this is mostly Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson's, so they go up to until 86. So if you're hoping to find like a lot of high-res pictures of all the modules for Warhammer 40k, for example, you won't find it. It's mentioned, and a lot of, you know, their more important IPs are mentioned even after 86, but just, you know, peripherally. But they talk about these books, of course, the Fighting Fantasy game series. So these were, you know, the game books that they produced, and they were really, I think they even inspired TSR to produce their Endless Quest books, but I'm not sure about that. I think Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson were first, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. Anyways, as you can tell, I love these books. I still read them from time to time, play them. I sometimes use other systems and sort of to play them solo. You know what I mean? So I will go through, and then when there's combat, I would use, you know, tabletop RPG rules. But yeah, so as you can see, I have quite a few of them. They also talk about how they licensed. They were the first to license Call of Cthulhu, the first 2 editions, I think, and RuneQuest, though these are the newer versions. I think they are both in edition 7 right now. But they were the first ones, I think, to publish them in, or at least, yeah, they published them through licensing, I think, or something like that. I was also happy to see that Dungeon Quest got a little mention, though the original Swedish game Drakborgen was never mentioned by name, which is a little bit of a letdown, but they did mention that they licensed it from the Swedish publisher Alga. So that got a little bit of a mention. They also mentioned Monster Manual 2. And now you will think, what? That was a TSR product. Well, yes and no. It started off, I think it was supposed to be a Games Workshop kind of product, but... And also it was so closely related that most of the, if not all, or at the very least most of the monsters in here were from White Dwarf, that the monsters that were published in White Dwarf for Dungeons and Dragons. So they just took all of them and compiled them here with new artwork, and even as Ian Livingstone even has like 15 monsters, I think, or something that he made that's in here. And in the foreword there is nothing mentioned about Ian Livingstone, Steve Jackson, or you know, even White Dwarf. It's mentioned like a magazine. It's all the, you know, and so that was a little bit weird. There was some stuff I didn't know about that as well. They also talk a little bit about the digital games. I don't have the box. I lost the box for this long time ago, but this is Ian Livingstone's Death Trap Dungeon, like a PS1 adaptation of one of his books, which I should have here somewhere. Anyways, and also, I don't know if you can see the shelf behind me. This is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. This is the 3rd edition that I have here, but you know, Warhammer 40k, of course, they talk about Blood Bowl and all that good stuff. So yeah, I recommend it absolutely, and it's yeah, I'm not gonna show any pages just because I don't want any trouble, you know. So, but if you can find it, I really recommend it. So, all right, see you next time.